There's a great and peaceful river in a land that's fair to see, where the Douglas fir tree whispers to the snow-capped mountain breeze, where the cliffs are solid granite and the valley is always green. This is just as close to heaven as my traveling feet have been. Roll, Columbia, won't you roll, roll, roll? Roll, Columbia, won't you roll, roll, roll?
Well, I'm a rambling man and I ramble all the time. Well, I'm a rambling man and I ramble all the time. A rambling man and I ramble all the time. Oh, Lord, Lord. Every good man's got to ramble when it comes his time. Tell me, which way does your Columbia River run? Tell me, which way does your Columbia River run? Which way does your Columbia River run? From the Canadian Rockies to the ocean of the setting sun. Tell me, how many rivers have you got in Portland town? Tell me, how many rivers have you got in Portland town? How many rivers have you got in Portland town? Say the Columbia River is the river that they all run down. Well, I walk down the road and I see your Bonneville Dam. Yes, I walk down the road and I see your Bonneville Dam. I walk the rocky road and I see your Bonneville Dam. Electricity runs the factories making planes for Uncle Sam. Well, I'm a rambling man and I ramble all the time. I'm a rambling man and I ramble all the time. A rambling man and I ramble all the time. Said every good man's got to ramble when it comes his time. Said every good man's got to ramble when it comes his time. Even a good man's got to ramble when it comes his time. Thank you. So, Woodrow Wilson Guthrie, born July 14th, 1912, to Charles and Nora Guthrie of Okemah, Oklahoma, about 60 miles southwest of Tulsa. He was named after the, at that time, very popular governor of New Jersey, who would go on to be elected president the following fall with the shadow of World War I rising over in Europe. Charles and Nora had come west believing in land ownership. Charles especially believed that land ownership was the way you built generational wealth. And he spent most of his time in Oklahoma chasing that big oil strike that he could never quite catch. We think that at any given time, Charles might have owned as many as 16 or 17 plots in and around Okemah. Woody also claims that his dad was a member of the Oklahoma Ku Klux Klan. Now, we don't know that for sure. That is, the historical substantiation on that is a little sketchy. But we do know that even at best, Charles was able to profit off some shady land deals where the Klan ran black landowners off of their land and he was able to buy it up at a lower price. When Woody was 7, he encountered the force of nature that was going to dog him for the rest of his life, and that was fire. Most modern Americans do not remember it, but once upon a time, before fire sprinklers and smoke detectors and fire alarms and mandatory fire drills and even governmental clothing standards, fires were common and they were deadly. As a matter of fact, the only reason schools mandated fire drills in the early 1900s was because for a few years at the very beginning of the 20th century, school fires were the #1 cause of child death in the United States. They mandated regular fire drills, government did, and numbers went right down. Makes you think. When Woody was 7, and she would have been 13 or 14 years old, his older sister died quite horribly when her clothing caught fire. She was standing too close to a wood stove in their house during an argument with her mother. The death cast a pall of depression over the Guthrie household that only got worse the next year when their entire house burnt to the ground. Woody had to go for a while when he was 8 and live with his maternal grandmother for a few years. Now, Woody claims that his mother may have set that fire in a fit of depression and dementia. We don't know that's true either, but we do know that after Clara's death, Nora Guthrie would often go from laughing to crying at the drop of a hat. She could be found walking down the main streets of town wearing her husband's shoes. She would go and sit in the local movie theater and stare at the screen in the middle of the day when there was no movie playing. Now, some of that was obviously probably depression and grief, but Nora was also in the beginning stages, we now know, of Huntington's disease. You will sometimes hear it called Huntington's chorea. It is a neurodegenerative muscular disorder. It takes the victim's bodily control away over time, often leaving them just able to sit in a hospital bed and maybe even just blink their eyes, yes or no, at the very end. It's very cruel. It is also genetic. And it would take 2 of Woody's aunts, his mom, 2 of his daughters, and in the end, in 1965, Woody himself. When he was 14, with his mother institutionalized and his father basically destitute, never being able to find any of that sweet, sweet oil, Woody had no prospects, really, in town, so he hit the road. And he spent the first few years of the Depression learning useful skills. You know, useful skills like how to hop boxcars, how to dodge rail yard security officers, and of course how to strum chords on a beat-up guitar. He was beginning to travel far and wide and write songs about the folks he was already calling his people. When he was 19, he decided to try and settle down, and he married young Mary Jennings, a girl from Texas. She became his first wife, eventually the mother of his first 3 children. And he tried. Woody tried. He tried to be a good, stable provider for his family, but every time he would come back from any of his travels, every time he would come back from playing his music all over the region, he would feel like life was just passing him by. Like it was all happening out there. And the town they were living in, little Pampa, Texas, just seemed drier and emptier. And so sometimes with other folk singers, sometimes just by himself, sometimes with his whole family in tow, he would throw everybody in the car and they would travel. Sometimes to places like the Florida Panhandle, sometimes to the upper Midwest, eventually settling in Southern California, all through places. And his fame was starting to grow. Also starting to grow was Mary's frustration with her young husband's inability to pick one place and stay there. One final move up north would be the straw that broke the camel's back. 1941, and FDR's REI, Rural Electrification Initiative, is trying to bring electricity to all the hinterlands in America, and it was personified in this area by an organization some of you might be familiar with, I don't know, the Bonneville Power Administration, or the BPA. And the mighty Grand Coulee Dam was rising up out of the Columbia River as a result. Now, then, just like now, not everybody was equally excited about damming up the mighty waterway, and so the BPA decided they were going to make a documentary film. They were going to have a short documentary film made that could play in local movie theaters before the main feature, and it would get everybody excited about the dam. So they hire a guy named Steve Kahn. He was a movie producer out of New York, and he had made a few documentary short subjects like this. Well, Kahn was smart, and he knew if he was going to make a documentary that was going to appeal to regular working class people in this part of the country, he couldn't make one like those they were always made. You remember how they were always made, right? We watched enough of them in elementary school. Do you remember how fun it was when the teacher would pull out like the projector and you knew, movie day? We all watched them, remember? And they were all the same. They were that black and white or sepia toned footage that always skipped a frame here and there, so people were moving a little too fast and shaking hands and smiling out at the camera around the construction project. And there was always that quick little sort of faux classical music soundtrack, you know, yum bum 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 ba ba da ba dum 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 dum. It was just kind of a little too sprightly, and there was that same guy who narrated them all with that stentorian tenor voice saying pithy, clever things like, "Rising up out of the deserts of eastern Washington, free electricity courtesy of Uncle Sam."
The roar and clatter of thousands of horsepower foretells the completion of the Mammoth Bonneville Dam and Power Project, another link in the chain of giants created under the Public Works program.
Well, he knew he couldn't do that. He knew if he was going to make a documentary that was supposed to appeal to regular folks, he needed music that would appeal to regular folks. He needed folk music. The problem was, Steve Kahn didn't know any folk singers, but he knew someone who did. Alan Lomax is a name that comes into a lot of folk music stories around this time in American history. And for good reason. He was the librarian at that time in charge of the folk music section in the Library of Congress. What he did not know about folk music was not to be known. So Steve Kahn calls him up, describes the project, and Lomax says, "I got your guy." And he puts him in touch with Woody Guthrie. Well, Woody, being Woody, assumes mistakenly after one phone call that he's already got the job. He's living in Southern California at the time, appearing on the radio 3 times a night. Appearing on the radio. This is not, they're not playing his recordings. He is going into the radio station with his partner, Lefty Lou, and they are playing on the radio 3 times a night. Once at dinner, once at 8 o'clock, and once when the radio station signs off at 11 o'clock. It signs off. I can't make my students believe this ever. It signs off. Radio used to stop. It used to sign off at night. So did the TV station. It just used to stop. Professor Underwood, what did you do? We went to bed. So Woody's down in Southern California. They get a hold of him with just one phone call. He thinks he's got the job. So he throws Mary, and by then their 3 children, Gwendolyn, Kristen, Little Bill, in a borrowed station wagon. They come up the highway to Portland, Oregon, to BPA headquarters. He walks into BPA carrying his guitar, says, "Well, here I am." Kahn goes, "And you would be..." "Oh, I'm Woody Guthrie." "Oh, right. You're Alan's folk singer, right, okay. And you have your guitar with you. Okay, well that's, okay, do you carry that everywhere? Okay. Could you play me a song?" And he plays him a song. And then he plays him another one. And right away, Kahn knows, Lomax nailed it. This is the guy. This is exactly what he needs. This is the music he needs, and everything would have been great except they kept talking. Now, I don't know if you know much about Woody Guthrie's politics circa 1941-42, but Woody Guthrie was slightly to the left at that time of, I don't know, Joseph Stalin, and there is no way that any employee of the United States federal government could have talked to Woodrow Wilson Guthrie for more than 5 minutes without going, "Ugh, this guy will never pass a federal employee background check." And it's true, he wouldn't have. Woody was already writing a column every week for a newspaper he jokingly called the Sabbath Employee, the Sunday Worker. It was a communist newspaper. Luckily, Kahn knows there is such a thing as a 30-day emergency contract that doesn't have a background check. The only problem is then you've only got the employee for 30 days. And so came the million-dollar question, well, how many songs do you think you can write in 30 days? I don't know. Reckon about 30, I guess. So, in May of 1941, Woodrow Wilson Guthrie signed a 30-day emergency contract with the United States government in the person of the Bonneville Power Administration. They gave him a form. It had a yes or a no box on it. It said, "Are you now or have you ever been a member of any organization that has sought the overthrow of the United States federal government?" Woody took a big old flat pencil and checked no. They gave him $266. They gave him a big black company car. They gave him a driver, a young man named Elmer Bueller. He was only a year older than Woody himself. And the two men headed east, and they made these trips. They looked at all the Columbia River. They would look to the dam. They talked to the people who were building it. They talked to the workers. They went and they talked to the farmers whose lands were getting irrigated. They talked to the people who were working in the farms. And all the time, Woody in the back seat of that big black car as they headed back towards Portland, strumming his guitar, strumming. Cars used to have really big back seats. Some of you may remember this. And all the time, and he gets back. And he tells Con he's written 30 songs. Well, not quite. Con had taken that time to get a little bit more familiar with Woody's catalog, and so he caught Woody doing what Woody did sometimes, what all folk singers did sometimes, which is taking older tunes and putting new lyrics to them and calling it a new song. It wasn't anything as blatant as what would it? This dam is your dam, this dam is my dam, from Portland, Oregon. Nothing that blatant, almost that blatant. Nothing that blatant. So they go down into the basement, BPA, they record the songs on acetate. If any of you remember acetate, some good sound quality, but it degrades really, really quickly. And now they're waiting for Con's documentary footage. Well, what happened? As is so often the case in the early 1940s, Adolf Hitler ruined everything. Operation Barbarossa, and Germany invades Russia. It becomes very clear that the United States is at some point going to enter World War II, and so everything gets directed towards the war effort. Every major industry in America stops everything it's doing and puts all its resources, all its materials towards the war effort. The documentary is stopped. The footage, everything is shelved. Con and Bueller actually get drafted. They both serve in combat in the European theater. Thankfully, both return home unharmed. But everything I'm telling you tonight might have been lost to the dustbin of history, if not for the luck and intellect of someone that I think some of you around here know. A young man in 1983, he was a BPA media services employee, a fellow named Bill Merlin. I'm a friend of Bill. I know we had breakfast not 7 or 8 weeks ago. We owe Bill a lot because it's Bill who finds in 1983, that's where we've skipped to. We've skipped 40 years ahead. It is Bill who, as a BPA Media Services employee in 1983, takes those acetates, finds them and goes, "Hey, that sounds like Woody Guthrie." Or if you can imagine Bill's voice doing it, those of you who know him, "Hey, that sounds like Woody Guthrie." He gets them up I-5 to a fellow named Greg Vandy, who at that time is the general manager of a radio station in Seattle, KEXP. He's also a music historian and a journalist, and they begin digging, and they uncover the full story that I'm telling you tonight of Woody Guthrie in the Pacific Northwest, his Bonneville Power adventures. Now, his son Arlo said that one of the reasons Woody was so fond of the BPA chapter of his life was that for most of Woody's life, Woody always felt like he was kind of on the outside of the machine looking in. He was always an outsider. And Arlo says, well, this one time, he felt like he was on the inside. And not just the inside, he said, he felt like he was on the inside of a world-changing, nature-challenging, bigger than anything could ever possibly be thing. And you can hear that. You can hear it on songs like The Biggest Thing That Man Has Ever Done, Better World A-Comin', and of course, Washington State's official state folk song. I'm in a room with people who know Washington State has an official state folk song, yes? You people seem to take your folk music seriously out here, so I'm assuming you know. Well, yes, Washington State is one of the few states that has an official state folk song, and you're gonna sing it with me right now. Now, when it comes to singing along, whichever song we're talking about, my rules are the same as Woody's. If you know the lyrics, sing out loud. And if you don't, sing out louder. It makes the person sitting next to you feel better about themselves. Green Douglas firs where the waters cut through. Down her wild mountains and canyons she flew. Canadian Northwest to the ocean so blue. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Help me out now. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Other greater rivers add power to you. Yakima, Snake, and the Cliquot Tattoo. Sandy, Willamette, and the Hood River too. Won't you roll on, Columbia, roll on. Let's do it again. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. At Bonneville now there are ships in the lights. The water has risen and cleared all the rocks, and now shiploads aplenty will stream past the docks. Won't you roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. Won't you roll on, Columbia, roll on. And up on that river's the Grand Coulee Dam, the mightiest thing ever built by a man to run the great factories and water the land. Won't you roll on, Columbia, roll on. You take this one, let's go. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. Won't you roll on, Columbia, roll on. Oh, you sound great. You sound good. You're hired. Get in the van. All right. Well, by the time it was over, 1943, the project cost $163 million. The dam rose 550 feet above the surface of the Columbia, and it employed over 8,000 men. Now, those are impressive numbers. But Woody had seen more than they meant him to. Woody always saw a little bit more than you meant him to. He had seen that those men made an average of 80 cents an hour, and that 77 of them died on that project before it was over. He had also talked to lots of people. He had talked to the farmers and the people who were doing the farm work. And he knew how much people were and were not getting paid in these newly irrigated pastures of plenty. And so there were other songs in that 26. Songs with a little bit more of an edge to them. It's a mighty hard road that my poor hands have hoed. My poor feet have traveled your hot, dusty road. Well, out of your dust bowl and westward we rode. Your deserts were hot and your mountains were cold. Well, I worked in your orchard of peaches and prunes. I slept on the ground by the light of on the edge of your city, you'll see us, and then we come with the dust and we go with the wind. California, Arizona, I harvest your crops. Then it's up north to Oregon to gather your hops and cut the beets from your ground, cut the grapes from your vine, to lay on your table your light sparkling wine. Green pastures of plenty from the dry desert ground, from the Grand Coulee Dam where the waters come down. Every state in the Union us migrants have been. We'll work in this fight and we'll fight till we win. Well, it's always we've rambled this river and I, all along your green fields I will work till I die, and my land I'll defend with my life if need be, 'cause your pastures of plenty must always be free. Well, both songs have gone on to become classics, but I think it's safe to say the BPA far preferred the first one to the second one. Well, imbued with newfound patriotism now, Woody decided he wanted to go next to New York City. And there he would hook up with a group called the Almanac Singers. Now, the Almanac Singers was kind of a loose affiliation of folk singers. The cast changed from time to time, but it had some people in it you might have heard of, folks like Lee Hayes and Pete Seeger. Mary, who was now realizing there was never going to be an end to the roaming around, told Woody that she was taking the kids and going back to Texas. She was moving back to El Paso, and if he went to New York, their marriage was over. Woody, who was now appearing regularly on the radio, booking concerts, had some steady income, he told Mary he would send her and the kids $100 a month, not a small sum at that time. And he went to New York. New York City, at that time, had the attraction for Woody Guthrie, not just of the Almanac Singers, but other folk notables such as Cisco Houston, Lead Belly, Burl Ives. Also had lots of radicals that he wanted to get to know and meet, folks like Will Geer, the actor, if you remember him as Grandpa Walton from the Waltons. Oh no, he was quite the socialist firebrand before he was telling John Boy good night every week. He had an apartment where they had all kinds of parties, talked about the problems with private property and the way the world ought to be. It was at one of those parties that he met a young dancer from the Martha Graham Dance Company. Her name was Marjorie Mazia. They began to date. She would go on to become his second wife, the mother of his next 4 children, and even though she was not his final wife, she was the one who returned to nurse him at the end of his life. Marjorie is by far the longest relationship of Woody's life. But New York City winters get cold. And by February of the following year, Woody had had it. He had had it. He had had it. He was done. He was living hand to mouth at the Hanover House Hotel, which is not the Ritz-Carlton, and everywhere he went in New York, he felt like he could not get away from that song. Oh, he hated that song. That song was everywhere. He felt like he was walking down the street and it was coming out of department stores. It was coming out of taxi cab windows on their radio. You'd go home and turn on your radio and you could spin the dial and catch it at different parts. Kate Smith singing Irving Berlin's God Bless America, land that I... Oh, he hated that song. He hated that song so much, not just because you couldn't get away from it, but because he felt like at that time, with everything that was going on in America, that song sounded to him like a cruel joke. When he looked around at the folks he called his people, he didn't see God blessing America. He saw his people suffering from unemployment, food insecurity, shelter insecurity. He felt like he wasn't seeing God bless anybody at all. One day in February, he comes home, he's freezing cold, he turns on his little radio. Click! Okay, goes over to his notebook, rips out one piece of paper. We still have it. It is the centerpiece of the Woody Guthrie Museum and Archives down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's on a lit dais in the middle of the museum. You must go. It is a wonderful museum. If you like folk music, the Woody Guthrie is right downtown. The Bob Dylan Museum is right next to. Oh, it's an amazing weekend of music if you have a chance to go. He goes and he rips out some verses on it that he calls God Blessed. ED, past tense, blessed America. Now, you know that song. You know it very well. You just don't know it by that title. You know it by the title it would take later, This Land Is Your Land. And it would become so famous that LBJ would later say that that song, and not the Star Spangled Banner, should be the national anthem. Now, that's an opinion. LBJ did not know the history of that song. Neither LBJ nor the thousands of elementary school children who sing it every year at choir concerts know the story of that song. Nor do they know the two verses that got cut and didn't make it onto the original 1947 recording. Voices that lampoon the very concept of private property. Verses like, was a high wall standing that tried to stop me. A sign was painted, said private property, but on the backside it didn't say nothing. See, God blessed America for me. Now, there was also a final verse the way the song used to end. Didn't make the 1947 recording either. One bright sunny morning, in the shadow of the steeple, by the relief office, I saw my people as they stood hungry. I stood there wondering if God blessed America for me. Now, when the producer heard that song, 1947, when they were laying it out, he reached over and he hit the stop button and he hit the talk back button. Woody, yeah? We can't do those two verses. They'll never play this song on the radio. Why not? Why? It makes it sound like America's too in love with capitalism, doesn't take care of its poor people. Okay, hold on. Let's just take a smoke break. Maybe. How about those first two? This land is your land. This land. That might be a good time. Now, let's be clear. At this point, Woody would never have agreed to the lyric change, the title change, had he known that song was going to go on to become his most iconic, most associated with song of all time. But at the time, it was just another song. It was one song among many. In fact, he already had a much bigger hit. The first combat ship sunk in World War II was a destroyer class called the Reuben James. It was sunk a month before Pearl Harbor, made all the papers, and Woody found out about it, wrote a few verses. It became one of the first big anthems of World War II. Have you heard of a ship called the Good Reuben Jane? And by hard-working men, both of honor and fame. She flew the stars and stripes in the land of the free, and tonight she's in her grave on the bottom of the sea. Tell me, what were their names? Tell me, what were their names? Did you have a friend on the Good Reuben James? What were their names? Tell me, what were their names? Did you have a friend on the Good Reuben James? Now, it is at this point in the show, every time I do it, I can tell who the guitar players are in the audience. Because when I play that riff, and say it's a Woody Guthrie song, I always see about, 6, 7, whoever, heads tilt kind of to the corner like, wait a minute, that's not right. Kind of like when your dog's home alone and your voice comes out of the answering machine. A minute, that's not how that works. No. If you are a fan of bluegrass, folk, Appalachian, old-timey string music, or as we call it where I come from, back in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, music, then you know that song, that lick is very famous. It's from a song called Wildwood Flower by the Carter family, Mama Maybelle and Papa A.P. And it is the first lick that a lot of kids pick up when they want to learn a little bit of bluegrass guitar. Maybe a skinny young teenager from North Carolina, you pick up your guitar and you learn to go, have you heard of a ship called the Good Reuben James? Except you go, oh, he taught me to love him and called me his flower. Same riff, right? That was blooming to cheer him through life's dreary hour. Oh, I long so to see him and regret the dark hour. He's the one that neglected this pale wildwood flower. Same song. Now, I can see some of you turning on Woodrow. Hang on. Let me take you back even farther, to 1850, to a song we think originates somewhere near the North Carolina-Tennessee border. A song so popular that young men were singing and whistling it 10 years later when they went off to sign up for the Civil War, called I'll Twine with My Mingles. Oh, I'll twine with my mingles and raven black hair, with the roses so red and the lilies so fair, and the myrtle so bright with the emerald dew, pale and the leader and eyes look like blue. Same song. Now, I point this out, I take us on this little musicological journey, not to try to get Woodrow off the hook, or certainly not to accuse Mama Maybelle and Papa A.P. of anything, perish the thought, but because that's how folk music worked. I'm just trying to sort of point out that everybody took old tunes and put new words to them. Pete Seeger did it, Burl Ives did it, Cisco Houston did it, everybody did it, and Woody certainly did it. And we didn't talk about copyright infringement and all that sort of stuff at the time. It's just kind of how folk music worked. Well, by the time we get to 1943, things are pretty good for Woodrow Wilson Guthrie. He and Marjorie have gotten married. They've moved out of town. They've moved to Coney Island, the little house on Mermaid Avenue they would be in for their entire marriage. February of that year, they have their first child, Kathy Ann, the little girl that Woody would always call Stack of Bones, one word, Stack of Bones, as her nickname because she was so skinny. He had put out his first memoirs, Bound for Glory, with Dutton Publishing, and they were selling very well. He had hooked up with the Almanac Singers. They had changed their lyrics too to be a little bit more pro-war, and they were playing everywhere. Oh, it looked like the Guthrie family was headed for a time, even with the war going on, of peace, prosperity, and stability. And then came the knock at the door. And who was on the other side of that knock? And all the amazing adventures in World War II it led Woody to as a result of just that knock are what we'll talk about next time I come back, if you're nice enough to have me. You know, the British refer to Arthur as their once and future king. Gone, but always ready to come back if England's greatest need should ever arise. In many ways, I think of Woody Guthrie as our once and future bard. Woody left us at the age of 55. But I would submit to you as we sit here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we may need Woody Guthrie's voice now more than we ever have. His songs encourage us to roll up our sleeves, to do the hard work of keeping our promises to those less fortunate than us, to not turn a blind eye to the inequities in our society, to keep not him alive, but his spirit alive. And we do that by reading his works, by telling his stories, and by singing his songs. Especially this one. You had to know what I was going to end with. Now, when it comes to This Land Is Your Land, I have very specific rules. They are the same as Woody's. Sing out loud, sing out strong, but only if you mean it. In other words, if you can sing This Land Is Your Land, but mean it the way Woody meant it. This land is your land, full stop, period. No exclusions, no caveats. This land is your land. This land is your land if your folks came across the Bering Strait in prehistoric times. This land is your land if your people got here on the Mayflower. This land is your land if your gang came here in chains in a slave ship in 1619. This land is your land if your people got here fleeing oppression and famine in Europe in the 1800s. And this land is your land if you just got here. And this land is my land. You know, Woody always used to say, the reason I don't own a lot of stuff is because I don't want to take care of a lot of stuff. In other words, Woody recognized that when you say something is yours, when you say you own it, it's not just a sense of ownership, it's a sense of taking care of it, of responsibility. It means when you say something is yours, you want to, I don't know, maybe protect it. Maybe keep it clean. Maybe leave it to the next people a little bit better than you found it. So if you can do those two things, my friends, tonight, if you can sing This Land Is Your Land with no caveats or exclusions or exceptions, and this land is my land, not just with a sense of ownership or responsibility, well then by God, sing along. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the redwood forests to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Roamed and rambled, I've roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps through the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts. And all around me a voice was sounding, saying this land was made for you and me. This land, you take it. This land is my land. This land is my land. Yeah. California to the New York Islands, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. One bright sunny morning, in the shadow of the steeple, by the relief office, I saw my people as they stood hungry. I stood there wondering if God had blessed America for me. Thank y'all so much. You were a lot of fun to do this.